Okay, this is Knotwork, and I'm here with my good friend Mike, and also
Hello.
special guest Zoe. She's sitting in for the session. Zoe?
Hi.
Welcome, Zoe.
We're happy she's here.
She's adorable and shy. But no, she's hanging out here with us today. So we're gonna take her along for the trip, and hopefully get into some really cool places.
Yeah, so we practice yoga together, and Sundays are our day for yoga here, exploring, working with our body and our breath, and developing more of a settled mind. And today we're going to explore the topic of mind. What do we understand of it?
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is a nice light topic.
we should approach it lightly, though.
We should. Because I'm certainly no authority on it. I mean, pretty much just all we could do is really speak from our experience. So
Yeah.
I've got no education.
Okay.
in
No,
the
I think that's a
mind
good place to
or
start.
anything. Sure.
What do you experience mind as?
An unruly child.
Okay.
But trainable. Seemingly trainable. You know, and one thing I've experienced in trying to get into that sort of thing in the last few years is the way in which to sort of train it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I've always had a lot of anxiety and things like that, some mental illness issues, and so that's something, if I've left it unchecked, has caused some trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's I've that you can't force it, because that's what I've noticed. You can't force it, but you can gently nudge it.
Mm-hmm.
You can always sort of gently nudge it.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the trouble with a lot of this. Trying to figure that out.
Yeah. The appropriate effort.
Right.
I think that's a good place to start too, because I would say that at some point in time, because of our situations, a certain maturity is born that this is my responsibility to manage whatever I understand mind to be. And that feeling of this, some effort is necessary, some self-effort is required here,
Right.
to manage whatever is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, and that usually starts with a desire for
mm-hmm.
something too. Like a desire for a sense of peace, or
yeah,
a sense of understanding.
make sense of it all.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's where it began with me.
Sure.
Just looking for that, that sense of calmness.
Mm-hmm.
Without all the racing around with it.
Yeah. Is it possible to have this instrument, or is it possible to enjoy a mind that's not racing?
Right. Yeah.
That desire.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And then what comes along with that is just trying to, you eventually get the curiosity to see, well, like once you start making certain strides, like, oh, I can achieve a sense of calmness, or I can achieve a sense of quiet or peace.
Mm-hmm.
You start kind of going like, okay, I can retrain myself, or I can sort of recondition something. But
Yes.
then you start getting into the curiosity of, like, what else can I do? What else is it capable of?
Yeah. I think that is the greatest place of exploration, the mind, the mystery of the mind, and how far you can explore, and the potentialities that you can invoke.
Right.
So Yeah, so
It's a tough one to find an entrance into really like into the discussion.
It is. It's so true because I'm really right now I'm going back. I'm trying to retrace my steps on how I came to understand the mind as I know it now.
Sure.
And when I first began, I had no perception of mind apart from just the thoughts
Right.
endlessly running. That was the only idea I had about what the mind was just a bunch of thoughts that I couldn't shut off. And just no awareness about any other aspects of our mind. And honestly, I didn't care when I first began my practice of yoga. I just really wanted to heal my body.
Right.
And so then slowly that awareness started to develop that there's this mediating factor. There's this other body called mind.
That's where all the experience is too.
Yeah.
Which is like this is a thought that I've had rattling around in my head this week. Kind of about this. So the mind is where everything is experienced. Everything. I mean, I can knock on this table right here, but that knowing that there's a table here, experiencing that there's a table here right next to my arm, that experience is now here. It feels and seems like it's happening outside of me, but it's still getting filtered through my mind.
Yes.
And at that point, you start to consider where is that experience happening? Okay, it's in
Yeah.
my mind. And then, of course, I made a ridiculously incredible leap, and my very next thought was,
Okay.
wow, how can I prove anybody other than myself actually exists?
Oh, okay. That's I think that's kind of like solipsism, where the whole world is in your mind.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was.
I see. That's one way you can go, for sure.
It's a trip. It was kind of a fun trip to see where that could take me.
Yeah.
Because then you do start feeling. We were running some sort of telekinetic experiments earlier.
Okay. Yeah.
And just trying to see what the mind is actually capable of. But I could, in that sense, going down that road with, thinking about that stuff, you sort of do start to feel that connectivity to everything. Or you can imagine it like, oh, this is all happening in here. So there should be a way to break down those sort of mental barriers and be able to interact with things on a more energetic level or on a vibrational level or something like that.
And I trust that that's possible even if the world is apart from mind. Even if the world is not completely in your mind, in an individual mind, and that the world is just a kind of body or factor that interacts, makes contact with the world, that they have a certain distinguishability.
Right.
So, yeah, I have my views on this mixed with my experience, what I've been taught about this, so I can share that.
Yeah, for sure. But I do want to ask you the question: can you prove that I exist?
Can I prove?
If the experience is all mental, can you prove? This experience right now is happening mentally for you. Can you actually prove that I exist?
Well, your self-existence, I don't have to prove.
All right.
That is immediate. There's no mediator there. You don't even require senses to know that.
Sure.
It's just effortless.
Yeah.
But, when you say that you exist, that opens up something else to look at, because the fact that you're saying because I perceive you with my senses, and that creates a certain impression upon my mind, and then that I become the knower of you.
Mm-hmm.
I become the knower of Mike. With reference to your form and everything, that has a certain level of existence. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
I know,
nice.
it's just a fun thought.
Yeah.
Prove that I actually exist. You know? Or how can I prove that you exist? Just, I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
It is. It was just a fun sort of experiment I was having this week.
Sure.
You know? You get to the point where like, well, what if nothing exists? You know?
Yeah, so, but you can't, okay, when you say I, too, because
Okay.
we've looked into that, when you say that,
Mhm.
then you can't doubt your own self-existence.
Sure.
But the fact, the fact that you doubt shows that you're there to doubt,
Yeah, I guess
right? You can doubt the existence.
There has to be something doubting.
Yeah, you can doubt the existence of your body or how real your mind is, but the very presence by which you doubt,
Yeah.
the very light, the consciousness by which you can even formulate a doubt,
Mhm.
that is what we're trying to discover at Vedanta. Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you say I prove that I exist, that I will be there and is self-effulgent. Yeah, what do you think?
It makes me think of when we were talking about dreams earlier.
Yeah.
Because have you ever had a lucid dream where you're so convinced that it's real until you realize that it's not? And then you ask a dream character, you're like, who are you? Or are you real? And they're like, you're not supposed to ask that question. Like, have you ever had an experience like that? And then you wake up from your dream and then you're like, oh, if that can happen in my dream, like, what about this level of reality?
Sure.
I don't know.
No, I think that's a really important point, and I think that yogis who can experience that awareness in the dream state can pull a tremendous amount of creativity here in the waking state. Just like we were talking about when you come out of deep sleep and there's this tremendous peace before you feel that the mind is becoming very active, that peace, that supremely deep peace state can be woven into this waking state. So I think like what you're saying about the dream can be woven into this waking state. Like if all that was possible there, what could I do here?
I know, yeah, that's true. I guess it just makes me question every level of reality, though. I don't know. And then, have you ever heard about people doing drugs? Like, I remember reading about people. Okay, so I remember reading about people doing salvia, which is like a horrible psychedelic, and they would smoke salvia. It used to be legal. I don't know if it still is, but they would smoke it, and they would all of a sudden they would live like an entire life of somebody else, like a completely different person.
I have.
And it would
heard
be like years. Like it would feel like years to this person. They'd wake up and then they'd be like, "Oh my God, what happened to this life that I was living? And my wife and my children."
Right, yeah, because the experience is only, I mean, the high is like 15, 20
Yeah, but it feels like an eternity.
Yeah, what people have reported coming back, like, I lived an entire life. I was married. I had children.
Like, what if I'm in a trip right now? Like, I don't like that.
Yeah, and then if you come out of that with that sort of still fresh in your
traumatic.
mind, you don't, it's traumatic because those were seemingly real relationships and real experiences and a real thing. And now you just got yanked into back into this other universe that you came from before, and you're like, what's real? It gives you that.
Yeah, so, okay, this is a really important thing, and in our tradition, we discuss 3 different levels of reality. So we get really clear, like, that question is really important. What is real? Yeah, what is real? So from a standpoint of Advaita Vedanta, we define real as a word. In Sanskrit, we call it sat, which means sat is, or reality, what is truly real, is that which doesn't change in past, present, future. And also, that doesn't change at any time. So that is our standard like a reality check. Like, what is it that doesn't change at any time? So we call that Sat. Make sense?
Yeah.
So just to start thinking in that way, is there something that never changes in past, present, future,
Yeah.
and also waking, dream, deep sleep? We go through these states.
Yeah.
Even the state of like sleep, where the whole world and time and space fold up, and there's that no perception of that at all. But there's something, the Sat, there's something that's real. That's what we say is the real, which doesn't change. And that happens to be
The awareness,
you.
I would say.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Or the I.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sense of, I. But
yeah.
Yeah.
That gets your head really clear about what is real.
Sure.
And then
If you're looking for some solid ground
yes,
to stand on.
that's because we find that in Advaita Vedanta, like, where's my footing?
Right.
Like, give me let me find my roots, and then I can explore these other dimensions. So is there something that you can say is indubitable, unchanging, the ground, the foundation? And what we say is very striking is it happens to be you
Yeah.
as that presence, that awareness, that consciousness by which you can even say, I enjoyed nothing,
Mm-hmm.
the state of no experience. Because you can even report it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's our base level. And then when we also discuss other levels of reality, and other traditions, I believe some in Buddhism, and they have the idea that the mind, or the world, is in the mind. But Advaita Vedanta doesn't agree with that. And we think it's a little bit creepy that, for example, both Zoe and Mike are just in Advaita's individual mind. And then if this mind goes, then like you go. Like, we don't think that's how the world and universe is structured. We give this another kind of empirical status, where it's not the ultimate real that we were just discovering, but it shares it's not an individual's creation.
Right.
So we say it's the whole, there's a word for this called Ishvara Shrishti, which literally means the emanation or creation of that truth manifesting through the whole. So like all the unique forces, the different orders that we find, that it's not one person's creation, it's the total's creation.
The collective.
Yeah.
A collective agreement.
A collective creation power. And that's what we are sharing right now.
Sure.
So that's middle tier level of reality. But see, most of the time we just think like this is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is all there is.
Yeah. This is what we get pulled into.
Yeah. So without having that higher standpoint, Sat, then this can be very sketchy without feeling that this is all there is. This is the only reality. Then there's one other level that we talk about that is the private level. And there's a lot of exploration to do here. But this is the level that's just purely personal, an individual's mind. And there's a standard for that. Like when is the creation just totally individualized and private and personal world? The perfect description for that and direct experience is in dream. In dream, you're giving life to creation. Like the whole thing is your own private world and creation, born of your memory.
Yeah.
So all the data that you've gathered from this waking state, you're taking all of that and you're literally building your own world. You're playing God in dream. And the dreamer, the dream people, the dream worlds, the dream things you see, all that is nothing but your own.
It's your mind is projecting something out.
Yeah, so it's more like
to engage with.
It's something like
state.
because I remember and I think and create, therefore it is. Whereas the relationship here that we're sharing in waking state is more like it's there. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I can have some approximation of what it is using my mind and senses.
Right.
But even that, we have to keep discussing because, like you were saying, Mike, too, and actually you as well, Zoe, is that when you start to have different experiences, or you hear about people having, it could be drug induced or these different states of consciousness. It's interesting to look at how when we use the mind to interact with our world, so much of our perception about this world is based on that little roadmap, our mind. Like I could perceive both of you as Swamiji had somebody sitting here once who came to visit him, or somebody brought him to Swamiji, and he said, "What's going on with you?" And so Swamiji asked the gentleman, hoping to perhaps help him or understand where he's coming from, and he says, "Oh, I'm just so," I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, "Oh, I'm just so locked up. I'm so bound here." And Swamiji said, "Just relax, like spread yourself. You can be safe and comfortable here, no problem." They said, "No, you don't understand, Swamiji. I'm currently in a matchbox. I am sitting within a matchbox, stuck in here." Like that was his perception of where he was.
Oh, like internally.
Yeah, like
how stuck he felt.
Yeah, so that
okay.
like he literally felt that he was in a matchbox
Mm-hmm.
and not resting on the couch and had all this free space. That I don't know.
Maybe just trying to conjure up imagery, like I feel everything inside feels
it
claustrophobic.
It could have been literal.
Oh,
because
okay.
he was also, I think, having like coming off of some drug.
Mm.
So, yeah. So I just said all of that to say that the empirical level of reality that we're sharing right now and being able to have a dialogue is also we put a lot of our own subjectivity into that to understand like what it is. So these are 3 levels. Now since we're opening all this up, these are 3 levels that we discuss in Vedanta, at least, that get your roots. There's a foundation, this unchanging being, and then there's a world that exists and therefore we can experience it. And then there's also totally personal world, private world.
Yeah. The private world, though. I want to go into that.
Sure.
Is it so? So there's private world of the mind. Is that just? Are you just referring to the individual experience, the individual, like the person's individual mind kind of coming into itself as a mind or as an individual mind? So like, you know, everything a person comes from, their upbringing, that what it's,
yes,
what's
all
the
that
personal stuff, or is it like just what they think in general, like about what they want or where they are in their life?
Sure. Okay. It's a both. Like it's mostly memory born.
Okay.
So yeah, that when I say private mind in this case, what I'm talking about is primarily the information that you've gathered from your waking state, formulating a world of a personal narrative and world that's primarily influenced by your memory.
Okay.
And so I'll give you like an example, a couple examples of how this very subjective mind can interpret things less objectively and create problem. Like, you know how we walk down this road all the time? I would just give you like a personal example of how that private mind could project into the world. So I'm always walking on the sidelines, and sometimes a car comes by quickly. And for example, this just happened the last walk I was on. Somebody just flew by me pretty close and didn't get out of the way. And that's it. That's all that happened. But what was to follow is this train of thought that that's projection I'm talking about in like practical terms. This projection, like, how could they do that? I'm wearing yellow.
Yeah.
They're so close. That's very dangerous.
That could have been it. Just all
like
sorts of
this huge narrative and story. But what actually objectively happened is a car went by close. Period. Full stop. So that's what we try to do actually in the practices. A lot of times when we're practicing meditation, we're just trying to reduce the load, the pressure of that personal, very subjective, like how that hurt me emotionally, how I make this drama and story out of it, when really all that happened was a car came close.
Right, just simplify it.
Yeah, just
simplify it to its just bare bones.
Absolutely.
Like, this is what happened.
Yep.
A car came by me close.
Absolutely. So I was just giving kind of like a more practical example of how that private mind could project itself even into the waking mind, like this shared world.
Right.
So we do that even with relationships. One more example I'll give just to kind of highlight this. I had a friend, a lady who called me who I hadn't spoken to a long time, and I missed her call. And when I saw that missed call, you know, you see on your phone somebody's name shows up that you haven't seen in a long time, the whole thought of why would they call me? What do they have to say? And then I started thinking about her husband and what was going on with them, and this whole thing, like there must be something serious that they're about to say, and I should probably call them back. And then I called, they didn't answer, and this whole story about what was going on. And I finally was able to reach her, and she said, "Oh, sorry, I accidentally dialed your number."
So you went in this tailspin of like, something's wrong, or they need something.
Yeah, I was
something.
just noticing how that memory-induced mind, how it can weave stories and different narratives around things unnecessarily.
Yeah.
So, so these are 3 levels.
Sure. And that's where I've noticed that sort of that spot right there that you're referring to, that sort of just slight spiral of like, oh, this must be important, or there must be something wrong, something like that. And that's what those instances that I was referring to a little bit ago, talking about how to redirect it, what kind of training, because you can't force it back in a place. You just have to gently come back this way. You know, you can catch yourself. It's tough.
Yeah,
it's
so
tough,
that's why we do, like in our practices, we are doing some of the centering practices, especially like focusing on a stable place of energy in the body, like in the navel region, just guiding your body and your mind and your breath to that space as a kind of anchor that helps give the mind a place to rest apart from the tendency to spiral like that. So that's where the practice comes in, catching that and saying, oh, I see that story's not actually true. It's not really serving a purpose at all, because I have no idea why she actually called. Just catching
and now
that.
You feel like stressed, like a physiological, like fight or flight kind of a thing. Like, what's up? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, your whole biology is like starting to react to that. So, just finding that space
that happens to me all
pause.
The time. I do that constantly.
So this is why
times a day.
This is why we practice. Why we practice centering and allowing our body, or allowing our mind to find a comfortable space, resting in our breath or in our body. Yeah. This is a very straightforward reason, is to prevent that habit and that tendency to project.
Sure.
Instead, enjoying. The thing too is, what's so beautiful about it is when we become more objective versus like subjective and projecting like memory about things, then you just can really look around and enjoy things more. Just enjoy what you're perceiving and see it like to see it for the first time again.
Yeah. That's it. That's a cool perspective, a cool outlook on it. I should consider that more.
See it fresh.
Yeah.
So there are several ways to help reduce that load of projection, personal projection into the world that's around us, which is truly one of beauty. Yeah. And incredible order.
Well, it seems like the unchecked natural tendency of the mind to just heap all sorts of meaning and stuff onto things from that it's just gathered up from its own experience. Yeah, yes, like churning out its own memory. Like, I think a lot of that has to do with the digestion, the ability to develop a mental not first focusing on the physical digestion, because we're doing all this in yoga practice, but then that will also start to convert into a kind of mental digestion through the breath work. How you can use your breath as a way to sort of recycle those memories and convert them. That's a lot of our work too. That way that load is not so heavy. Because we all experience so many things and then feel sort of just haphazard, however life is like blasting in us from all sides. Right, yeah. And it's the like the first thing that you said about that desire that there should, that desire to control, or that desire to
take corrective measure.
Mm-hmm.
That is this,
Discipline.
Yeah, that discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And we find in like Gita, Krishna says it can be done. He said, because Arjuna's like, this mind is as fickle as the wind.
Yeah.
How can it be? And he says, by abhyasa and vairagya, which means loving regular practice, and also by the ability to detached engagement. So these two wings, we reduce that load of
Yeah.
projecting into the world instead of just seeing it really clearly.
Right. Oh, sorry about that sound.
No problem. So, do you have anything to say to this?
I want to hear your thoughts, special guest.
Oh no, I'm on the spot. Just on projecting? Yeah. I mean, it's a big reason why I got into yoga. I think is because I see myself doing it all the time with every little thing. I don't know.
Okay, no problem.
Is there ever a usefulness that you find in letting your mind just wander unchecked, go wherever it's going to go?
Oh, I like doing that with asana when you just sit in one posture. Because it's more fun to observe it. Because it's like you take a step back and then you just watch it go. And then you're like, oh, that's interesting to every little thing. I don't know. I like doing it as a practice, but...
Yeah, we were Zoe and I were kind of discussing this too, about the intelligence of some of the way that the yogasana are designed, and about because from a yogic perspective, since there's a certain relationship between your body and the mind, and in Advaita Vedanta we feel that they're seamless.
Mm-hmm.
So by organizing the body in a certain way, it taking a certain shape, seeing how it influences the mind. So I too like to do this and experiment with this by coming to the same seat every time I practice in the morning. And then when I come into that same seat in that space, it sort of awakens the memory, the expansive and nourishing memory, like using memory skillfully, remembering the goodness of the practice kind of comes alive just by taking that seat.
Yeah.
So it's cool you're experimenting with just seeing what happens to your mind if you take a asana.
I've done it in a lot of ways. I've talked to you about this before, but with dream recall. Yeah. If I change postures, well, when I wake up in the morning and I'm trying to recall my dreams, I'll lay in one posture, try to remember everything that comes to me, and I'll be like, okay, I guess that's all I dreamed. And then I've learned that I can switch postures and then new dream memories will come to me. So if I switch to my side, then it's like maybe I was dreaming while I was on that side, and then all the dreams that I was dreaming while I was sleeping on that side come back to me.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's I like using yoga for that reason. I like using asana for that reason. It's just, and also just noticing the way I go about in the world, like the way I change my posture. Like if I'm curled up, or if I cross my arms a lot, I'm a lot more withdrawn. Versus if I open my posture up, then I can be a lot more expressive and a lot more vocal. So I've experimented with that in my active life too.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's crazy. The fact that your mind and body kind of have that sort of seamless bond like that. That's something that I've never
You gotta observe it.
Well, yeah, I guess I've never considered it.
Yeah.
That is one of the powers of the Hatha Yogi. They say, make your body like a diamond. They will say, if you can get this physical instrument in a certain alignment and harmony, then your mind naturally follows.
Just straightens itself out.
Yeah, same. Yes, exactly. Okay. And the same is true with the breath. If the breath becomes smooth and deep, and then the channels are purified, then naturally the mind will be drawn into that. Like that thinking, running mind can't help but feel nestled in and supported by the breath. Like they start to bond and form a relationship. So these are ways that you doesn't take a lot of books or any strenuous study, just very practical and straightforward. But I love what you said about I haven't explored this much, but with the dream and how you're noticing different parts of the dream memory come alive when you switched. Because that also shows us too about the mind occupying the space of the body, like filling the space of the body, which is what the yogis say, that your mind is not just this one little small part somewhere located up in this head region,
right?
That your mind also takes the shape of the body.
Yeah, I agree with
So
that. I think you can see that with certain health conditions too. Like me having digestive issues, I think it's inability to process certain things that I've experienced, or inability to process sensory things because I have a sensory perception disorder. I don't know. I feel like there's just connections between things like that.
And this is all really interesting to me because these are things that I don't practice. These are, I've on the breath, something like I've done deep breathing, some deep breathing practices, but never with this sort of approach that you guys are coming from. This is something outside. This is something I have no,
come practice with us.
Come practice with you? I need to. I should. I absolutely should.
It's so fun.
But I just, I find for me, so much of my mental energy, my mental efforts are really just on gently teaching myself how to think differently, how to sort of shed those old preconditioned habits of thinking, all those projections on, sort of simplifying it, pulling that stuff off, but then replacing it with something that would be the opposite. For me, it's very easy to be in a negative, with a negative outlook on, it could literally be anything. Somebody could hand me, $5,000 and I would put a negative spin on it somehow if I let it go unchecked. But it's the, slow learning how to change its direction. And I've found, which is that's something everybody does, but that's where the most interesting stuff I think happens, because the subtleties of what's happening in that redirection, the things that you start becoming aware of, at least in your thought patterns or something like that. You can see how you can immediately go from point A to point F without, in an instant, but then you can slow it down sort of and acknowledge that there are several steps in there. There could be many.
Yeah, sure.
And just becoming aware of them allows you to move away from that, and so having that sort of,
that's
oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, I think about that, about how the transformation in time and change takes place, all these units, and how it looks like one thing has happened suddenly, but it is actually followed by a trail of a cause of micro events that led to that thing.
Right.
Even in a very physical way, sometimes when we have something on our body, like perhaps a joint goes out, or suddenly we just feel this sharp pain in our wrist or something like that, we think that just comes out of nowhere. Oh, this is my luck or something, or what's going on? I'm getting old and this just happened. But when you become much more aware and watchful of those gaps, those movements of how you're shaping yourself and holding your body, you'll find that a lot of times they didn't just there's a cause behind that. This effect is not proceeded without having an underlying reason. So one, that can make us just more relaxed and feel like we're not just a victim to whatever's coming our way. But two, also it can help us get more insight about how we pattern that we think, pattern that we just the different patterns in every level of our being, like how we operate. So yeah, I think about that a lot of times in a physical way, about different ways that I hold my body and how that could stack up over time.
Yeah.
I mean, even simple things like the simplest things like your daily brushing your teeth with the right hand, putting the right shoe on first over the left, over a period of time. I mean, not something to stress about,
Sure.
but it is interesting to look at how life is always unfolding in these little moments, and then they can lead to different buildups. I said that because you're talking about how you're like saying one thought like suddenly goes to a totally different maybe train of thinking.
Yeah.
So
and sure. And it's all, I mean, sort of becoming aware of what you usually do on autopilot.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
there's sometimes we call that like a conditioned tendency, just a tendency that was born for a reason to either protect ourselves or like have a sense of safety, or that could be a sense of our own dignity, protecting our own dignity, or having a sense that I have a place in the world. And so these different tendencies are born that just happen unconsciously. So yeah, we're working with that a lot in yoga, or in this work of becoming more aware, is seeing if we can watch those and notice whether or not they're still serving, like they're still useful. So
yeah, man, it's I do need to invest time into yoga, I think. I was just talking about this with Zoe before we started this. I was like, yoga is cool, it's fine, but I don't know, I don't know.
It's
and
everything.
Now I'm actually feeling like, oh yeah.
You can make your practice really simple just to not scare you away from doing it, because that helps me. And like not to do any, because I know you said you struggle with flexibility. Maybe just do something that isn't unpleasant to you. Because advice said that yoga shouldn't be unpleasant, so it should be enjoyable. So
yeah, it's the thing is like, yeah, when I tell you like let's do yoga, Mike, the thing is I feel probably what you're imagining is just doing so many different asanas and then stretching your body really uncomfortable ways.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you're so much more to yoga. Like what you're describing too is this path we were talking about in other episode about bhakti. Patanjali addresses that in the path of yoga, about surrendering. He talks about the power of shraddha, or faith, how that develops an incredible energy within you. And he also talks about this capacity to entwine with the Ishvara, the force behind the whole creation.
Yeah.
So all these things are discussed in yoga. It's very, very profound and deep.
And it's what I'm gathering too is it's all really just trying to find a way to create some sort of coherence, like energetic coherence or thought and feeling coherence, something where your heart and your mind can settle and sort of line up with your heart, or line up with your places of energy and stuff like that. Yeah. So those things can communicate with each other and flow.
They call this, there's a word in yoga for this too. It comes in our Upanishad too. That's called a rhythm. It's a Sanskrit word, rhythm, but it literally is like being in rhythm with the universe.
That's too perfect.
Yeah, though it's Sanskrit, for English, it literally translates as a kind of total resonance, like you just said, resonance with your surroundings, with your people, with your own thoughts and mind, with your emotions.
Just harmonizing.
Yes, harmonizing.
Basically harmonizing with.
The cool thing about yoga too is one, it's universal and everybody can practice it. And two, what's also beautiful about it too is not only does yoga aim at developing a settled mind and see your mind as something that's really profound and beautiful, but yoga also speaks about tapping into your creative power too. So that's why it's really neat. It says that you've been privileged and gifted with this thing called mind. And in Patanjali's idea, mind is the greatest gift. It's like a gemstone that can be used to be reflecting things outside, or it can be used to be pointing things inside. And he also talks about its capacity to create, do really cool things.
Yeah.
Which are beyond my understanding, but it inspires the yogis.
Sure.
To see what you can tap into, what you're capable of. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And with the creativity stuff too. I guess so that's intriguing for me.
Yes.
I mean, because I love trying to find different avenues into creativity or finding inspiration.
Yes.
To be creative in some way. And
so yoga talks about the mind's capacity, your capacity to develop a new way of knowing things that's different than different than like our regular sense perception. Kind of like even what we were just noticing when we are softening our gaze, and that ability to see something subtler that's off the skin, a certain kind of light that's covering the skin, like the ability to perceive life in a refined way.
Sure.
So yoga talks about these things, like how to refine your senses, refine your instrument of mind. And Patanjali says that there's no end to how refined this can become. And he says
it's scary to think that the mind is literally the access point to infinity. I mean, it really there's, to me it sounds like that's what he's referring to, like it can be so refined, like there's no end to it.
I don't know, but
right.
Yeah.
Could just be
no. That's sorry. No, that's what I think. I think it's like when I read Yoga Sutra, one, I just feel more and more inspired to practice, and two, it is really pleasurable and enjoyable experience, and I feel that there is truly no end to excellence. That's the kind of feeling I get behind reading this text on yoga, that there's no limit to our potential.
Sure.
What I wanted to say is I've had some experiences where I've, like, you know how you talk about projection, and I've always thought that the way that you look at the world or the way that you see things is a reflection of what's going on with you presently, like psychologically. Like if there's some things that you don't know about, like, but I've always thought that, like, if you're able to perceive something in a certain way, that means that that's also in you in some way. And I've had some experiences that were kind of spiritual, where I'll be looking at something really big, or like, I don't know, like a space simulator or something, and I see how gigantic it is, and it's like mind-blowing that I'm able to perceive it. And then there was like part of me where I was perceiving, like I was playing like a little space game simulator, and I was like, because it was like I was mind blown by how big, because it was to scale. So I would like zoom out from Earth to the sun, and it would take like 5 minutes to get to the sun. I was like mind blown. And then something said to me, I was like, oh, because I'm able to perceive this amount of space, it means that that amount of space is also something that's inside of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's where sort of what I was speaking to earlier about the existence being all, or the experience being all mental. And that's because that's true. That's fascinating. The only way you can really get a sense of something that much space is through some inner sensation of experiencing that much space.
Yeah.
You know, which is something that you haven't actually experienced. You haven't been out into the depths of space,
Right.
to sort of feel its openness.
It was just that's exactly the thing. It's just realizing that because I was able to experience like perceiving that amount of space is what made me realize that it was me.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Or that it was a reflection of something inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I feel that good things. That's why I also feel like the practice of yoga after a certain period of time will also just become effortless and enjoyable, because you'll definitely start to notice how naturally your perception of things will change, and how it's positively like you'll see, like exactly what you said, that spaciousness within you you'll start to understand things in a much more spacious way as you interact with the world, and it will sort of like fold back upon you. We've kind of touched on this a little bit too, about like, I think you've talked about it in terms of cultivating a particular emotion or certain attitude, and then approaching another person with that welling up in you about this, and noticing how the dynamics changed.
Yeah.
So I think if that's not coming from a place of wanting to control or dominate the other, but more just from your own inner sense of peace, it definitely will, you'll start to see that back. In fact, Patanjali says that in the Yoga Sutra. He says, this world exists for you, my dear one. Because he says this acts as a kind of, he says it's prakasha kriya stitishilam bhutendriyam atmakam bhoga apavargartam drishyam. He says this whole world, which is nothing but play of light, motion, and mass, the elements, and somehow I feel that I'm this being and with a mind situated. He said this whole thing is for your bhoga, for your enjoyment, and also for apavargam, which means for your transcendence. Like you see it as a mirror for yourself, and when and it's like this, it's this field for you to unlock yourself and unfold your potential in.
Yeah.
So when you interact with the world, it's like it's folding back upon you, and you get to like understand your glory, like who you are through interaction.
And that's
so.
I mean, that's similar to like what we've discussed a lot with manifestation.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, because you know where you operate under the assumption that everything outside of you is just a reflection of what you're experiencing inside. You know, and so that's what that was, I think, that you were referring to. In much in the same way, if I think of myself in a coffin, I feel claustrophobic. You know, or if I think of myself, you know, if I think or start feeling happy, then I'll start having happier thoughts or something like that. But then those things do eventually seem to come back and reflect back to you. You know, so that's really the. What's that?
Advait was talking about in Indra's web, which is you can explain it if you want, but it's he's a god, and he weaved this gigantic. I guess it's like it's a creation story. Yeah, but it's like a creation story, right? Yes. So he created the universe, I guess, and laid across this gigantic web, and in each little corner there's like a node that's like a reflective,
like a little gem, like a little diamond or something,
reflective, like water droplet, and all the water droplets reflect each other, I guess, and it's like everything is in everything. It's kind of I don't know if that's
okay, that is to me is one of the most beautiful visions of understanding the world, like this. And Swamiji loves this. I learned this from Swamiji, actually, because he's brought this up a couple times and inspired me to just speak on it a little bit and kind of have us all reflect on this idea. But it's called the Indrajal, which literally means Indra's web, and it is a vision of how the universe is structured in terms of a magic web that spreads in all directions endlessly. So there's no center in this web. It's just endless, infinitely spreading itself out, and then every single sentient being becomes like the diamond center in one of those, and they're all like this riot of light reflecting each other. So I love I love that idea. It resonates with
That
me.
is cool. And the reflection element
Yeah,
of it
yeah.
of it too seems really interesting too, because of what you just said too. Like, I can see myself in you, I can see you in me,
Yeah.
and having that,
That's where the everything is a mirror thing
Mhm.
comes from.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything's a projection in a way, but also a mirror. I don't know.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's something really deep to think about. One thing I wanted to say too is that like in the Upanishad, I was just reflecting on this too last evening, is that you'll always find this movement before the primary teaching takes place on discovering oneself. You find that the teachers are instructing the students to reflect upon like bigger spheres and spaces in the world around them. Like they'll give a meditation on reflect upon the upper space, the sky, reflect upon the earth, and the middle space and their link. Just like expanding your mind to start thinking in terms of these like bigger spheres.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like a meditation on thinking about the connection between light, vapor, like the sun as a source of light, the atmosphere, and lightning that joins it and connects it. Like these meditations on light, or meditations on, there's a meditation on speech, on the upper jaw, the lower jaw, the tongue, and then the connection of making the contact in speech. Like these things just like expand your mind to start thinking about how things are so beautifully structured.
How much? Yeah, and how much space?
There's a quote. I don't remember exactly what it says, but I think it's from an Emily Dickinson poem. And she says, mind is bigger than the sky, and the mind is bigger than the ocean, because in one contains the two of them. Do you know? It's like, because mind can perceive the ocean and the sky, it's bigger than both of them. It was like the brain is bigger than the sky. I don't know. It's the way it was put was really lyrical and beautiful. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that quote has always stuck out to me. Yeah. Mm.
That's really cool.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah. But no, I see that, taking something so simple as speaking, and then pulling it all back and seeing the entire process of what happens and how much space there is in that.
I know.
To really see how something we do just without thinking so much of the time happens so beautifully. That's really cool.
It's so cool. And what I mean, even just getting to share that with you, I feel so settled. Like I feel it's hard not to smile when I talk about like just thinking about the grandeur of the sun and the stars and like a streak of lightning and the connection between this, like these spheres, like upper, middle, and lower. When you just say that, you just feel like, my God, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Like we're in this huge, like living. You feel like you're in a living like in the living presence of God.
Yeah, you've a conscious, aware universe.
Yes, and that is what is necessary to. That is what's necessary to listen to the scripture, and do this like self-inquiry.
Sure.
Is that feeling of richness and blessedness, and yeah. That's so cool. Like, I heard another artist. I might have told you this, but I heard another artist too. He's one of my favorite independent artists. His name is Tama Odell, and he's a singer-songwriter, piano, beautiful voice. But he recently released an album where it was primarily just acoustic. I think he dropped his label and then just started an acoustic album, just acoustic piano and his voice. And it's so beautiful. It's also very dark. But one of the songs is basically touching on a very dark state of depression that he was going through, and it touches on something that what expanded his mind out of that mode of darkness and depression, and it was literally him walking on the side of the shore like on a lake or beach or something, and just looking at the sun for a moment and thinking about how it's continually emitting light effortlessly, and just like understanding how whatever problem he had, how small it was in the vastness of this. Like, this will come and go. Someday I'm going to leave this body, or whatever I understand about death. But this sun has been here for all these people to see before me. I'm witnessing this small glimpse of it, and it's going to be here when I go.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, understanding the perspective of things. Like, wow, this problem is so small.
Yeah.
Like compared, so it's really powerful to just look into the sky, look at the wind and the trees,
and feel how small and insignificant you really are.
You're spinning this. You're spinning this, Mike.
Just I'm nothing.
That's true. Also, I have thought about. I think that's also a powerful kind of reflection, like about thinking that I'm so important, and then like people. It's like that feeling. I don't know if you've ever been to been to a funeral, and then witnessed, like everybody going through these emotions and the speeches,
Mm-hmm.
and then afterwards, like, okay, when's our next meal? Let's get some grub. Like, how can you even talk about food right now? I mean, just to see how, like, it's the kind of like that wake up call of people will move on. Like, this time is going to swallow up. Who cares? That there, you can look at it that way too. Like, you're this totally insignificant speck.
It's kind of scary, but there's something kind of that makes me feel a little bit peaceful when I think about that too. Like, it makes me feel bad, but it also doesn't. Do you know what I mean?
There's a part of you that it's the part of you that's really impermanent is like, oh, that sucks. But then there's that other part of you that's like, oh, okay, I can relax. I can be. I don't have to take this so seriously.
I think that's what we should take from it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That we don't have to stress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think part of it is not taking things too seriously. I think it's sobering.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it brings you back to yourself a little bit.
For sure.
Mm.
For sure. And that's. Yeah, and I think that is the same thing that you would take from. Or the singer-songwriter that you were referring to.
Yeah.
Probably, he was probably in that sort of similar
I believe
headspace,
so.
but sort of coming at it differently.
Yep.
And rather than think that as a result of his negative state, he was, he was thinking something else that pulled him out of it.
Sure. Basically, like this deep state of depression, if I give it more perspective, if I become less subjective and look at this more objectively, look at how small this is compared to the whole. Like, in relation to so many other things, this is not worth sweating.
Right.
This is not worth continuing anymore. Like, it doesn't serve any purpose any longer.
Yeah.
So
I don't have to. Why am I hanging on to it?
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't I just loosen my grip, let it be,
cling to
go.
that pain,
Right.
and creating more and more suffering out of it. So
But
yeah,
that's so addicting, that's the addiction.
it is.
We're hooked on
It's,
that,
It becomes a habit, and then it subtly influences everything in our life and our whole perception. So that's just what we try to skillfully work with in yoga, is that those habits are taking the form of, when they become subtle impressions, they become they take a form of energy, and then they have the ability to manifest again into thought, into feeling and action, but they do exist in a subtler form. And so that's what we're working with too, with the breath.
Mm-hmm.
Pranayama is we're helping refine that mental energy, blowing away the smoke.
Yeah.
It's just like that. So, because people will be like, how does simply breathing change my mind, or change those, like, those huge mental impressions or habits?
That's my question.
Yeah,
with it.
because it at a subtler level it's energy, and your breath is backed by energy. So if you can tap into that, you can recycle memory, reconvert that energy. Plus, the breath just becomes an anchor where the mind finds a time and place that it can be settled in. So the mind and your breath are going to start forming a kind of friendship, where the mind discovers it's much more. This is where I find solace, is when I link with the breath. I remember this energy.
There becomes an association. So when when your body starts doing this thing, your mind is going, okay, I have to. There's a relation.
There's a certain
when when the body's doing this, I should be doing this. My mind should be doing this.
But it goes even deeper, because if you're looking at it from an energetic standpoint too, when the breath becomes more energetic and the mind bonds with that, it starts to understand the source of energy. It starts to develop a relationship with your body and mind are a manifestation of this, like that whole that we were talking about, like seeing things in perspective. You start to recognize how your own body and mind are part of Ishvara, the creation. How you stop feeling like your body and mind are outside of the universe. Separate from the universe. Separate from that force. So then it becomes much more easier to manage your senses. Like, it becomes much more effortless to stop indulging in like overeating or any kind of form of like excessiveness, because
those like anxious void fillers.
Because
void filler things.
Because when you realize like you are experiencing a manifestation of the divine right now, and you are entrusted with everything that's presented, like in terms of your sensations, you just feel like you're sitting on a treasure chest, and you don't want to harm it,
right?
Or it like becomes very natural to not want to do harmful things, or to yourself,
sure,
and in turn to everyone else outside of your body. So
things sort of just fall
in place.
Right,
the
where
rhythm
they're supposed to be.
The rhythm. This is how it works.
So I think the biggest takeaway from this entire conversation for me is do the damn breath work.
I'm always just pushing this on people. And
dude, for real, you have there have been so many times I've come to you like, oh, this issue or this problem, or I've got this hurdle that I'm trying to, figure out, and you're just like, do breath, just breathe. Just do breath work. And I'm like, yeah, but then, I gotta, and you're just like, just breathe, dude. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't get it.
Okay. But see this is a point that I have to say, is that you're already breathing.
Sure. Yep. And you've raised this point with me. And it's true. It's, what it is that the best nuggets of wisdom are always the simplest things, which is why they get so overlooked, which is why they get forgotten so easily.
Yeah.
And because the breath, your breathing, is something that you're always doing.
Take it for granted.
You just don't, you're not aware of it. You forget about it. It happens subconsciously, it happens in a part of your brain where it is on autopilot.
Yeah.
You know, but just turning in and focusing on it. Or putting your awareness on it, though. Yeah, I can totally see where that would open things up.
It does. And I'll give you one more convincing point too about this, because why so much of this too? Because the question of thought there, without the experience of how the breath is related to this deeper form of energy, might be like, how is that possible? But I'll give you an example. Even when the mind, like our perception of time and space and that whole thinking mind shuts down, like in deep sleep, you're still breathing.
Right.
That force is naturally watching you, supporting you every moment. Like your body is still alive. There's a certain liveness there, though your whole perception is gone. Like your whole world and sense of self is collapsed. But even then, that breath is still there, supporting you.
Yeah.
So it's that feeling of when you start practicing the pranayama, it's this feeling of being intimately supported by her.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. This is a mind changer for me, this conversation.
Neat.
Yeah. So this is cool. This is what I needed today. Coming here.
Okay.
Obviously. Or not obviously, apparently.
Yeah.
But all right, should we wrap up? We're at about an hour and 10 minutes.
Wow, that went so fast for me.
It did.
Okay.
It did.
Great talk.
Yeah.
Thanks,
awesome.
Zoe.
Thank you, Zoe.
Yeah, no problem.
You're awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Come hang out anytime.
sure.
All right, we'll see you guys later.